My daughter-in-law had no idea that while she was putting her mother first, I was depositing $200 a month into their account and keeping their household running 4 days a week. I didn't argue. I went home, opened my bank account, and changed everything. The Sunday roast was cooling on the counter when Laurel pushed her plate away. She wiped her mouth with a napkin, checked her smartwatch, and glanced across the kitchen table at me. "Dean and I talked," Laurel said, her voice matter of fact. "Mom is moving into the guest suite downstairs next month. She wants to be closer to the downtown art center." I paused with the serving spoon in my hand. For 3 years, since my husband passed away, I had spent 4 days a week at their house in suburban Denver. I drove 7-year-old Leo to soccer, prepped their dinners, and managed the laundry, while Dean worked long hours and Laurel built her design business. "The guest suite is where I sleep when I stay over on late practice nights," I said calmly. "You have your own townhouse 20 minutes away?" "Nadine," Laurel replied, not looking up from her phone. "Mom needs the ground floor because of her hip. My mother comes first. That's just how our family works." Dean kept his eyes glued to his mashed potatoes. He cut a piece of beef with deliberate precision, refusing to meet my gaze. He had mastered that silence over 5 years of marriage. Whenever Laurel set a demand, Dean retreated into his plate. "I see," I said. I did not raise my voice or argue. Instead, I set the serving spoon down neatly beside the dish, folded my linen napkin, and placed it on the table. For years, I dropped everything whenever they called with a schedule conflict, a sick child, or a sudden trip. I had rearranged my life around their convenience, believing it was love. I stood up, walked into the hallway, and took my jacket off the hook. "Aren't you finishing dinner?" Dean asked, looking up briefly. "No, thank you," I said softly, picking up my keys. "I have things to handle at home." I walked out into the cool evening air, feeling a quiet clarity settle inside me. The drive home to my quiet brick townhouse on Maple Street took 20 minutes. Sitting in my dark driveway with the engine off, memories from the past 3 years drifted through my mind with sharp clarity. This was never an isolated incident. When Laurel's mother, Evelyn, wanted to remodel her condo in Phoenix 2 summers ago, Laurel volunteered Dean to fly down every weekend for 6 weeks to handle the drywall and electrical work. During that entire time, I managed their household alone, picking Leo up from day camp, cooking dinners, and mowing their lawn. Laurel had thanked her mother for letting Dean help, but never offered a single word of gratitude to me. 6 months ago, when I caught a severe bout of bronchitis, Laurel called on the 3rd day of my fever. She did not ask about my prescription or if I had groceries. Instead, she asked if I could still watch Leo after school because she had an appointment at a boutique salon. When I told her I was too dizzy to drive, her tone turned frosty. She remarked that family members were supposed to show up when things got busy, as if my illness were a deliberate inconvenience. I had spent decades working as a head accountant for a regional manufacturing company before retiring. I knew how to read ledgers, track balances, and calculate deficits. Sitting in my kitchen that night making a cup of chamomile tea, I realized the emotional ledger in my relationship with my son's household had been deeply in the red for years. I had given away my time, my energy, and my presence without condition. In return, Laurel treated my dedication as an unpaid entitlement, while Dean hid behind compliance to avoid domestic friction. The digital clock on my microwave ticked past 10 o'clock. My phone buzzed on the counter with a message. It was a text from Laurel detailing tomorrow's grocery list and pickup times, expecting tomorrow to be ordinary. The text message on my phone screen was customary. "Need you at the house by 2 tomorrow. Leo has a speech therapy at 3, and I have a client presentation." There was no greeting and no question asking if I was available. I looked at the glowing screen for a few seconds. In the past, I would have set my alarm early, rushed through my morning errands, and arrived 30 minutes ahead of time with a fresh container of homemade soup. Instead, I set my phone down, finished my tea, and went to bed. At 7 o'clock the next morning, I typed a brief response. "Good morning, Laurel. I have personal appointments scheduled today and won't be able to drive Leo or manage dinner. You and Dean will need to handle his afternoon routine." 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Dean. "Mom, is everything okay?" he asked, sounding slightly hurried over the background noise of morning traffic. "Laurel showed me your text. She's stressing out because she has a big contract meeting with a developer in Lakewood." "I am fine, Dean," I replied evenly. "I simply have other commitments today." "Can't you move them?" Dean asked, his tone carrying a familiar edge of exasperated plea. "You know how Laurel gets when her work schedule is disrupted. Just this once." "No, Dean. I am unavailable," I said. A brief silence hung over the line. Dean was unused to hearing a straightforward refusal without a lengthy apology attached. He hesitated, clearing his throat awkwardly before speaking again. "All right. Laurel is going to have to leave work early to cover it then," he said, hoping the guilt would make me reconsider. "I am sure you two will work it out," I replied calmly. I hung up, poured myself a fresh cup of black coffee, and opened my community center bulletin. For the first time in several years, my Tuesday felt entirely mine, and I had no intention of apologizing for it. By Thursday afternoon, I visited the local hardware store on Arapahoe Road to pick up potting soil and cedar mulch for my spring flower beds. Gardening had been my passion for decades, but I had abandoned my yard 3 years ago because every free afternoon belonged to Dean and Laurel's household. While waiting in the checkout line near the plumbing aisle, I spotted Laurel's mother, Evelyn. She was walking briskly alongside an employee pointing out brass cabinet handles from a high shelf. Her gait was smooth, energetic, and completely devoid of any limp. "Make sure you pack 6 of these boxes," Evelyn told the clerk cheerfully. "My daughter is converting the ground floor suite into an art studio for me next month. I'm moving my easels in as soon as she repaints the room." I stood quietly behind a display rack holding my bag of potting soil. Evelyn had not suffered a severe hip injury. She was not an ailing elder who needed a ground floor suite for accessibility. She was simply an active hobbyist whose daughter wanted to provide her with a private art studio at my expense. Laurel had lied to justify displacing my presence and asserting total dominance over family resources. I paid for my gardening supplies and walked out to my sedan in the parking lot. The crisp afternoon breeze carried the scent of pine. I did not feel rage or grief. I felt an immense clarifying stillness. When people show you their hierarchy, arguing with them is pointless. You simply step outside their structure. I loaded the heavy bags into my trunk without rushing. Laurel had told me her mother came first, expecting me to quietly accept a demoted role as an on-call servant with no standing. Sitting behind the wheel, I placed my hands on the steering column. It was time to reorganize the structure of my life permanently. I started the car engine and drove home, ready to reclaim my time without seeking anyone's permission. That evening, I spread my financial records and personal calendar across my dining room table. For the past 4 years, I had maintained a joint checking account with Dean, which I originally opened to cover Leo's Montessori tuition swim lessons and emergency sports gear. Every month, I transferred $1,200 from my investment dividends into that account. I had believed I was helping a young family build stability. But looking at the bank statements from the previous 6 months, I noticed recurring charges at high-end home decor stores, boutique wine shops, and weekend spa resorts. My monthly contributions were not safeguarding my grandson's essentials. They were subsidizing a lifestyle of luxury, while Laurel treated me like an unpaid housemaid. I logged into my online banking portal. Without anger or hesitation, I unlinked my primary retirement investment fund from the joint checking account. I set the recurring monthly transfer to 0. Next, I opened my personal planner. I had spent 40 years managing corporate ledgers and budgets. I knew how to plan a transition smoothly. I enrolled in an advanced Master Gardener certification program at the Botanic Gardens that met every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. I also signed up for a Saturday morning accounting advisory clinic for local small businesses at the public library. My schedule was suddenly full of meaningful, engaging work that honored my skills and brought me intellectual joy. I was no longer a blank space on someone else's calendar, waiting to be penciled in when emergency childcare was needed. Before closing my laptop, I sent a formal, polite email to both Dean and Laurel. I notified them that my recurring financial deposit for the supplementary account would conclude at the end of the current billing cycle, giving them 4 weeks to adjust their personal budget. I closed the screen and slept soundly through the night. For the first time since my husband passed away, my future felt entirely purposeful, peaceful, stable, and under my own command. Over the next 3 weeks, my days transformed into an enjoyable rhythm. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I attended lectures on alpine horticulture and worked in the greenhouse potting seedlings. On Wednesdays, I met a group of retired professionals for morning walks around Washington Park, followed by coffee at a local bakery. Meanwhile, Dean and Laurel's household began to feel the friction of everyday realities. Without me handling the 4 o'clock school pickups, after-school snacks, laundry folding, and dinner preparations, their daily routine cracked under pressure. Dean called me on a Friday afternoon while I was repotting perennials on my patio. "Mom, can you take Leo to his Saturday morning swim meet?" Dean asked, sounding worn down. Laurel has to take her mom to a gallery opening in Boulder, and I have mandatory inventory audits at the warehouse. I have my accounting clinic at the library tomorrow morning from 9 until 1. Dean, I replied in a calm tone. "I won't be available." "You're volunteering at a library?" Dean's voice rose with genuine confusion and frustration. "Mom, Leo is your grandson. We need family support right now. Can't you skip one volunteer morning?" I committed to advising small business owners who booked their consultations weeks in advance, I said. "Leo is welcome to visit me for Sunday lunch after church if you'd like to drop him off, but I cannot take over your Saturday transportation." "Laurel is overwhelmed, Mom," Dean said, letting his defense drop for a second. "Between hiring a part-time babysitter and managing the house, everything feels chaotic." "Managing a household takes work," I said gently. "You and Laurel will find a system that fits your priorities." Dean went quiet. He realized I was not offering a rescue or stepping back into my former role as their unpaid safety net. He murmured a quiet goodbye before ending the call, leaving me to enjoy the warm afternoon sunshine across my blooming patio garden in absolute stillness, content with my path. The first of the month arrived, and with it the reality of my unlinked account struck their finances. Without my $1,200 monthly deposit, their budget faced an unexpected shortfall. On top of that, paying a private driving service and hiring a cleaning company twice a week had added another $1,500 to their expenses. On Tuesday evening, the doorbell of my townhouse rang. I opened the door to find Laurel standing on my porch, dressed in an expensive designer trench coat, holding a pastry box from a high-end French bakery. "Nadine, I brought you some almond croissants," Laurel said, stepping across my threshold before I could invite her inside. "I thought we should sit down and talk like adults." I closed the front door behind her and gestured toward the living room armchairs. "What brings you by, Laurel?" She set the pastry box on my coffee table and smoothed her coat. "Look, I know things got tense a few weeks ago, but cutting off the auxiliary checking account without having a family meeting was an overreaction. Dean is working overtime, and my mother's art studio setup cost more than anticipated." I sat across from her with my hands resting in my lap. "I gave you 4 weeks of written notice regarding the financial adjustment. That account pays for Leo's enrichment activities," Laurel said, her polished facade slipping to reveal sharp impatience. "You're punishing your grandson because of a personal disagreement with me. Leo's parents earn combined salaries well above the state average," I replied evenly. "I funded that account out of goodwill, not obligation. When you informed me that your mother comes first and defined my place as secondary, you clarified our relationship. I simply adjusted my contributions to match your definitions." Laurel stiffened her jaw, clenching as she realized her attempted guilt trip had completely missed its mark. She stared at me in disbelief, realizing for the very first time that her usual tactics had no power here. "Are you saying you won't help us anymore?" Laurel demanded, standing up from the armchair. "After everything we built together as a family, I am saying that my role as your unpaid household manager and financial underwriter is finished," I answered steadily. "I love Leo dearly. I am happy to take him to the zoo on Sunday afternoons or host him for dinner whenever you arrange it. But I will not manage your home or bankroll your lifestyle." Before Laurel could reply, my front door swung open. Dean stepped into the entryway, his tie loosened, holding a set of spare keys I had given him years ago for emergencies. "Laurel, stop." Dean said, his voice quiet but firm. He looked exhausted, bags dark beneath his eyes from weeks of working overtime and handling school runs. Laurel spun around. "Dean, tell your mother that she is tearing our family apart over a simple misunderstanding." Dean looked at his wife, then looked at me, sitting calmly across the room. For the first time in years, he did not stare at the floor. "It wasn't a misunderstanding, Laurel," Dean said, exhaling heavily. "You told my mother she was secondary in our lives. You used her labor to save our time and her money to fund your mother's studio while treating Mom like she was invisible." Laurel's eyes widened. "I did that for our household, to build equity and support my mother." "No," Dean said, shaking his head. "You took Mom for granted because she never pushed back. And I let you do it because it made my life easier. That was my mistake." Dean walked to the entryway table, placed the spare key gently into the ceramic dish, and looked at me. "You were right to stop Mom," he said softly. We needed this wake-up call. Laurel picked up her handbag without another word, turned on her heel, and walked out the door with Dean following closely behind her into the dark night. 2 months passed with a steady, quiet dignity. I did not monitor their household, nor did I ask mutual acquaintances about their domestic struggles. I knew from Dean's occasional Sunday phone calls that they had downsized their spending, scaled back their luxury subscriptions, and adjusted their work schedules to share Leo's afternoon pickups equally. Evelyn ended up paying for her own studio rent at a commercial arts complex downtown after Dean refused to fund the residential remodel. For the first time in their marriage, Dean and Laurel were operating within their actual means without an unacknowledged elder quietly absorbing their deficits. On a bright Saturday in early May, I hosted Leo at my townhouse. We spent the morning repotting strawberry plants in cedar planter boxes on my back patio. Leo had soil smudged on his cheeks, laughing as he pressed the root balls into the rich, dark earth. "Grandma, Dad said you used to grow big tomatoes when he was little," Leo said, wiping his forehead with the back of a gardening glove. "I did," I told him, smiling as I handed him the watering can. "And we are going to grow the sweetest strawberries in the neighborhood this summer." At 4 o'clock, a car pulled into my driveway. Dean stepped out to pick up his son. He looked rested, wearing casual jeans and a flannel shirt. Laurel remained in the passenger seat, but when our eyes met, through the windshield, she offered a polite, subdued nod, a silent acknowledgement of the new boundaries governing our lives. "Thank you for watching him today, Mom," Dean said as he walked onto the patio. "Leo was looking forward to this all week." "He was wonderful company," I replied, handing Dean a basket of freshly washed mint and basil from my garden. "We had a lovely afternoon." There was no lingering tension or unspoken expectation between us. There was only the clean, honest clarity of mutual respect built upon firmly established and protected space. By midsummer, my Master Gardener certification was complete, and I began consulting part-time for the Denver Botanical Society's Community Urban Farm Project. 2 mornings a week, I taught local residents how to build sustainable soil beds and harvest organic vegetables. On weekends, I kept my advisory hours at the public library, helping budding entrepreneurs balance their books and manage cash flow. My relationship with Dean and his family found its proper, healthy equilibrium. We gathered for dinner once a month at a neutral restaurant or celebrated family birthdays, together with genuine smiles. Laurel never again presumed to dictate my schedule or view my resources as an extension of her own. She treated me with polite consideration, recognizing that my presence in their lives was an invitation, never an obligation. Leo visited my garden every other Sunday. He helped me prune the tomato vines, learned how to compost fallen leaves, and listened to stories about his grandfather. I was his grandmother now, not his stressed, exhausted on-call babysitter, but a grounded elder who offered warmth, undivided attention, and wisdom. Sitting on my back porch as the evening sun dipped behind the Rocky Mountains, painting the sky in deep shades of amber and violet, I poured a glass of iced tea and rested my hands on my lap. For years, I had dropped everything whenever they called mistaking self-sacrifice for devotion. I had waited for them to notice my exhaustion, hoping they would offer the care I so freely gave. But when Laurel declared that her mother came first, she gave me the greatest gift of all, the freedom to choose myself. Putting myself first had not broken my family. It had finally established its truth. I took a sip of tea, breathed in the cool mountain air, and smiled at the life I had chosen. My heart was light. My daily schedule was my own, and every single tomorrow promised the quiet joy of a life lived on my own honorable terms.